Cool. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for coming. I know there's a lot of competition out there of people talking. So yeah, I'm going to talk today about some of the changes or developments in Ethereum and how they're going to impact ETH staking yields as well. So, okay, just briefly about myself. So I've been in crypto since 2013 and been also involved in proof of stake or this kind of ecosystem for a long time. I was part of Cosmos early on. I was CEO of Cosmos and then started Course One in 2018. And I also co-host Epicenter, which at this point is the oldest crypto podcast. Okay, so yeah, with Course One, we are one of the leading staking infrastructure operators. So we support over 60 networks. You know, we have about 150,000 nodes, accounts that are staking with us. And, you know, we work with lots of different institutions, from VCs, wallets, exchanges, custodians, etc. Aside from that, we also do venture investing. We have a research team which actually focuses a lot on yield optimization and tracking kind of performance on different networks. And yeah, we have different kinds of staking products. And yeah, so here you see a bunch of our partners and customers. So today I want to talk about two things. So first of all, restaking. So I'll talk a little bit about the restaking landscape and what's happening there. And then second, I'll talk a little bit about a topic that's, you know, very new, very nascent, and I would say still very open how it's going to unfold, but it's pre-confirmations. You know, it's one of the hot Ethereum topics. So this thing here. Okay. So, was it here? Do I go this? Oh, no, there it is. Okay. Okay, so restaking, right? Basically, the idea of restaking is very simple, right? You're staking, and when you're staking, your tokens are locked up, and, you know, often some of it is slashable, but generally, you know, only a very, very tiny amount. I think in the history of Ethereum, only like $4 million have been lost in slashings. So you have, you know, all these billions that are staked, but actually at risk is only a tiny, tiny amount. And so it's, of course, been a very obvious idea for a long time. What if we can maybe use this capital more efficiently? And this idea has been explored in different ecosystems in different ways. In the Cosmos ecosystems, it's been an idea for a long time, you know, with interchain security, mesh security. I mean, Polkadot, in a way, can be seen as a sort of shared security thing. In Solana, we now have. But of course, the thing where we have seen the most maturity and the most activity here has been Ethereum, especially with Eigenlayer, but also now Symbiotic. And the way it works is really very simple. People stake, they get a liquid staking asset, or you can also do it natively in some ways. And then that asset is used again to secure additional networks. So in the Eigenlayer case, they call these AVSs. So, you know, what is kind of this market today? So this market today is around, on Ethereum, around 5 million ETH. So that's worth $14 billion. It might be a little bit less now. But, you know, it's a pretty significant amount. And if you see sort of this in the context of the overall market, right? So we have around 120 million ETH, around 34 million ETH is staked, so that's 28%. And then around 5 million ETH is restaked. So that's pretty good, right? For given how you know, short restaking has been around, it's gotten to, you know, fairly decent volume. Now, if you look at the restaking, the breakdown here of the different players, you know, Eigenlayer is very, very dominant. So you have around 85% of the ETH that is being restaked through the Eigenlayer protocol. In second place, we have Symbiotic with 10%. and then third place is Karok with 4%. So that's what it looks like right now. Now, I think it's also interesting to compare maybe Lido with EigenLayer. Lido, as the largest liquid staking protocol, has been around since the launch of Ethereum staking. Of course, we've been involved in it since the beginning. We were one of the validators that launched Lido. And Lido's had a tremendous amount of success with, I think, around 30% of ETH that's being staked through Lido. But actually, it's also remarkable here to look at EigenLayer. So EigenLayer has reached in a relatively short amount of time 4.4 million ETH. So that's, it's a little bit less than half of Lido. So pretty remarkable. What's also interesting is actually looking at the breakdown here. So we see that most of the ETH that's staked through EigenLayer is not staked through liquid staking asset, but it's staked natively. Now, I think the reason here is that when you stake through Lido charges you 10%, whereas if it's native staking, there can be other kinds of fee splits. So most of the value in the restaking protocol actually goes through LRTs. So things like DeFAI, Renzo. And then those LRTs in the back end, they directly stake ETH instead of using a liquid staking asset like Lido. So if we go back here in the slide, you see here the history, right? So we see here Lido has really been very stable, sort of around this 9 million mark. And then we see kind of the growth of EigenLayer here, which grew very rapidly. And early on, this also did reduce a little bit the amount of ETH that was staked through Lido. So sort of, a year ago roughly. But then, since maybe May of last year, EigenLayer TVL has been, flat and even declining like a little bit. So now, what does it look like from a financial and from a yield perspective? So if you just stake Ethereum, you earn 3.5%, maybe a little bit less, but something around that. Now, if you are restaking it also, then you can earn some extra yield, right? Which is why people are doing that. Now, where does that extra yield come from? Actually, most of the extra yield so far has come from Eigen itself, right? Eigen basically using their own token and then saying, hey, we are going to use our own token to pay people who are locking ETH in the EigenLayer protocol. So that's been, that was pretty high. Now it has come down over time, and today it's around 1%, a little bit less than 1% that this adds to sort of your staking APR. The other thing is LRT incentives. So these LRTs have their own token, so the DeFAI token, the Renzo token, and they then use that token to kind of incentivize adoption of their protocols. So these LRT incentives, I think, were pretty high, but actually most of the LRTs today have phased out these incentives, so they actually got pretty low. So we put around 0.3% here, but of course it depends on which LRT you're using and a bunch of details. And then the last thing is really the real yield right here, because in the end you can think of like Eigen and LRT incentives. They're kind of them giving away future ownership in sort of the interest of these businesses that they're building. But the actual real revenue of these businesses has to come from AVSs. So they have to come from new chains that are being secured by these restaking protocols, and they're paying in their own tokens or in some other way. Now today, I mean, we put 0.2% here, but that's actually an exaggeration. So I mean, today it's practically zero right now still. So I think that's also one of the reasons why we've seen sort of the EigenLayer TBL go down a little bit, because the Eigen incentives decrease, but we have not yet seen any real revenues coming from AVSs. So I think for restaking to really succeed, you need to see that last number here, AVSs, to start really go up.
And I do think there is a big challenge here for AVSs, which is that if you're an AVS and you now use your native token to pay for like ETH security, these people generally want more ETH APY. So they're going to tend to sell the token. So it creates a lot of downward pressure for AVSs, which is, I think, one of the reasons why they're so reluctant to also pay extra yield. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges of restaking. And we'll have to see how this plays out. Here on the left, you see some of the different players in these categories. So we see Eigenlayer, Symbiotic, the main player on the restaking protocols. On the LRT side, the liquid restaking side, EtherFi is the largest, and then we have things like Renzo, Puffer, Swell, Kelp, and Mellow, which is focusing on Symbiotic. And then on the AVS side, we do have a pretty decent number, a pretty good number of good projects building AVSs. So things like EigenDA, their own thing, Redstone, Bolt, and some others. Now, what's also interesting is actually looking at leverage in the system. So the way it works right now is that there's a lot of leverage embedded in Eigenlayer, where people say, okay, I'm going to deposit ETH into one of these LRTs. I'm going to get the token like EtherFi ETH, Easy ETH, RS ETH. I'm going to put that into Aave. I'm going to borrow more ETH, and I'm going to loop this thing. So that can be looped multiple times. Now, it is worth saying that, one, the risk is pretty low right now because there's no slashing on Eigenlayer still. Is that changed? Well, I'm not sure actually. It's supposed to come imminently. In testnet, right? But of course the LRTs, they really try to generate more ETH yield, so they will sell those Eigen rewards. And so this is what it looks like right now. So you see, for example, for EtherFi, 64% of the ETH, or of the EtherFi ETH, is actually in Aave and being used as collateral to borrow against it. And it's even higher, 74% for Kelp and 54% for Renzo, for some of these other protocols. So you can see a tremendous amount of leverage that's in the system, which also means that, if the yields here start to go down a little bit, so that it doesn't really make up for the borrowing costs anymore, you could see this really unwind, and I think TVL for the restaking protocol shrink dramatically, especially before you see really real yield coming from the AVSs. But still, I think restaking is a tremendous, it's an opportunity for Ethereum. It helps to, enhance security and decentralization for layer 2s and key infrastructure, bridges, data availability, all kinds of protocols. It helps with capital efficiency, so it allows people to earn more on their ETH. It allows the ETH or other assets to be used more effectively. And it is a great opportunity for individual stakers to earn more yield. So that was the restaking part. Now I want to touch a little bit on the pre-confirmation part. So pre-confirmations, who here is familiar with pre-confirmations? So a few people a little bit. So pre-confirmations basically refer to a mechanism that allows somebody to get a confirmation that a transaction will be included in a future block. So some kind of guarantee that lets me know that, okay, this transaction is going to be in a block. Now, this kind of guarantee of course, has to come from some of the actors that are active in this supply chain and actually creating the block. So that's the block proposers, the block builders, and relays. And they can then provide some kind of guarantee here. And the party that asks for this guarantee, they pay some extra tip, some extra fee for getting this pre-confirmation. So that's the high-level idea. So what does this look like? So the user basically sends a request for a transaction and some tip. That can be sent to the proposer. The proposer then communicates this to the relay. The relay basically tells the builder, hey, include this in the block, right? Make sure when you include a block that's included, and then the builder sends back a block that includes that transaction, sends it to the proposer, and the proposer then submits this block. So it basically creates a limitation for the builder in terms of what the block needs to look like. Now, there are some different players in this pre-confirmation game who have different philosophies of like who should do what here. So I think most notably, there are some people who think this pre-confirmation should come from the proposer. So that's the validators. That's Chainbound is working in that direction. And then a company called PrimeF is focused more on having builders serve as the entities that give these pre-confirmations. So it's kind of unclear which of these approaches is going to win, or maybe both of them can exist in parallel. I think it's still very early. So what are the benefits of pre-confirmations? Well, one thing can be user experience, right? So it can be the case that I make a transaction and I kind of get a confirmation like super quickly that like, okay, my transactions are like confirmed. Even if it's not in an Ethereum block yet, I can have the guarantee that it will be. And the big other thing that people are interested in is this idea of based rollups. So in the traditional way rollups work, you have some special server, like operated by Coinbase in the case of Base, that sequences all the transactions, orders them, and then also captures most of the value from this rollup. And in the based rollup case, the idea is that the Ethereum validators themselves function as the sequencer, and they use kind of these pre-confirmations to give like fast confirmation. Okay, this transaction is gonna be included. So this is one of the things that, for example, Justin Drake has been pushing a lot, and it's been kind of one of the ideas for how you can have also rollups contribute more value back to the Ethereum and Ethereum base layer. So what are some of the potential effects pre-confirmations could have on the staking yield? Well, I mean, in a positive case, I hope this is going to happen. It could be that this really helps with Ethereum usage and adoption. Because it's a better user experience, and maybe it enables some use cases that are a struggle today. So we could see more demand, we could see more transactions. Now the impact on MEV rewards is pretty complex, and it's not really clear what it is. On the one hand, you can say, hey, as a proposer and as a validator, and thus indirectly as a staker, we get some extra revenues from these pre-confirmations. So that is one factor. But it can also be the case that, if we as a validator get paid to include a certain transaction, and now we tell the block builder, hey, you must include that transaction, it puts a constraint on how they can create this block. And so you can have the scenario that, they could have made a more valuable block without that constraint, but now they have to have constraint, and they create a less valuable block, and in the end, actually the revenues are lower than without pre-confirmations. So that's one of the challenges. So that basically leads to the third point, the pricing of pre-confirmation. Like, how do you know as a validator how much to charge people? When someone says, hey, I want to include this transaction, I want to pay an extra tip, is that enough? Is it sufficient? Should it be higher? It's very difficult to know this. So this is it's going to increase a lot the complexity for validators too, if validators are to do this job. And it is something that our research team has also been spending some time on. So if people are interested in potential pricing models for pre-confirmations, you can check out preconf.course.1. Now I have to warn you, it is pretty technical, and it gets very much into the weeds. So probably mostly interested for people who are deep in a MEV searching block building game. But yeah, we have been very involved in pre-confirmation since the start. So this was a picture, this was a picture from the first pre-conf block on mainnet in Thailand. And so there was different validators involved in this initial thing, including us. But basically, to summarize, right, The base rollups are, base rollups are basically layer 2 scaling solutions that delegate this sequencing to the L1 validators, and then the L1 proposers, in collaboration with builders, guaranteed inclusion in the next upcoming L1 block. So this is kind of now it's also worth saying that, probably there can be some kind of, in the end, you cannot have an absolute guarantee that the validator is going to include that transaction. One model here is that validators who participate in this put up some kind of bond, and then if they don't follow through with their promise of the pre-confirmation they gave, that they get slashed. So that is one of the models. But as I pointed out, this is very early. I think that's all for my end. So thanks so much for coming on.